Hey guys, what's up? So with the current situation ongoing and everyone having to stay inside, like a number of other people, I've decided to do a bit of a lock-in quiz. So this day is day 5, looking into medabots. This was one of the series I really enjoyed. I don't think they actually did enough series of it. I know they did first couple of series and then they actually made a third series as well. I've watched all of them. However, I do think they could have done more with it, or to at least given it a bit of a spin-off show. And considering that other series have had that, such as Inazuma 11, Beyblade is the most extreme example with various different incarnations that I just can't keep track of. But let's get into the quiz. So the first question is, what type of medals can trigger the Medaforce outside of rare medals? I decided to go with this question because it's quite unique to a couple of different medabots out there. There's a specific episode where this one of the medabots has developed the ability to use the Medaforce when they haven't got a rare medal. And this is considered to be quite a bit of a shock when Dr. Aki goes and investigates the medabot. The Medaforce itself is triggered by an emotional response, which also makes it quite interesting. And the answer is ancient medals. There was a character that used this. It was Koji Karakuchi. His medabot, called Similodon, is believed to have had connections with ancient versions of the medabots, and therefore has the ability to harness that power. This was actually used in the battle against the USA team, which won Team Japan their qualifications through to the next round. Dr. Aki was again very confused about this and actually ran tests. No overall conclusion was made from this, but that's the nearest they got to any sort of result. Okay, so question 2 is, when did the original series of medabots run from? It's actually quite a long time ago, just to give you a bit of a hint. It's something that I was surprised of, that I was as young as I was at the time. But it was a good series for its time anyway. This is looking at the original series, not the third series, which was involved the kilobots. Have a rough guess. I'm not expecting a specific date, but if you can give me the year, that's best. That's the best bet. If you can get the month, even better. And the answer is, it ran originally from July the 2nd, 1999 to the 30th of June 2000. This was the Japanese showing. Of course, it being an anime, came originally from Japan, therefore they got their episodes first, and then it was later dubbed. As for when it released within America, this was from September the 1st, 2001, so a little over 3 months once the first series had completed in Japan, all the way into April 27th, 2002. So you're almost looking at a time span of a couple of years. And this covered, the first series covered 26 episodes. The third question is, when was the official release of the first Medabots game? Remember, like other series such as Inazuma 11, often the game came out before the actual anime release, so that should give you quite a big hint, considering the answer for the last question. It's not. It was really quite early, actually. I was only a few years old when it first released, which I was a bit surprised of. I never managed to get hold of the first game. I remember when I think there was a game for the GameCube that I saw once alongside Digimon Rumble Arena 2. I wanted to get both of them, and I wasn't allowed to get them because my parents didn't have the money at the time. Eventually, about a couple of years ago, I was able to get it for myself, and I really enjoyed the game as it was. I can't remember the name of the GameCube version, though. And your answer is the 28th of November 1997. So this came out a couple of years before they actually created the anime. I suppose it got enough demand from the audience for them to modify into, to diversify into a larger range of products, including the anime itself. And of course, they will have had the manga that released before that as well, which gave them the storyboards to use for the series. Okay, for this one, I've decided to go a little bit more tricky. Question 4 is, what were the names of the members representing Team Kenya? These were Team Japan's most formidable opponents, and they were the final round. They have been competing for a long time and were considered the favourites to go ahead and actually win the whole tournament. I'm not expecting the names of the medabots, but just the team members, including their team captain. Just as a hint, there are 3 members per team, so I'd like to know what the 3 names are. I'll have to say, finding this information for myself was quite difficult, because medabots being as old as it is, there isn't that much information, even when you look through some of the Wikipedia pages and the wiki page and the fan-based pages. To find the information, I did have to kind of almost look at one character to find the names of the other characters. Again, it's quite difficult to find the particular episodes online, so I wasn't able to kind of reference them from that. But I managed to remember the main character, and once I saw the other 2 names, something did trigger in my head. I do know for fact those answers are correct. And the answers are Victor, who is the team captain, Ibestia, and Prowder. I remember that Ibestia used a medabot called Rhino Rush, which looked like a rhino, and Prowder used something that looked. It was called Goriongo, which was a gorilla-based medabot. I remember there was like a self-sacrificing technique that they used, where part of that strategy was for Goriongo to attach itself to one of the opposing players' medabots, and a Bestia would then use his Rhino Rush in order to basically destroy both Goriongo and the opponent's medabot. This was used as a strategy against Team Japan to take out, I think it was Similodon. And obviously Victor has his medabot, which was, of course, War Bandit. This resembled a lion. All 3 are animal-based, and they represent some of the wildlife that Kenya has to offer. The next question is a little bit of a tricky one. Question 5, which medabot was able to copy the Medaforce during the World Championships? Now, you shouldn't be too confused about this question. There has only been one medabot that has been able to replicate a Medaforce, so there's no confusion between. I'm not talking about other medabots that can use the Medaforce, but actually one that can specifically replicate the exact type of Medaforce that your opponent is using. Now, this was not confirmed within the anime itself, whether this medabot could naturally use the Medaforce, or whether it's just part of their copying abilities to use it. We never got a clarification on that. And the answer is Cleobattler. This was a medabot that was the lead member of Team Egypt's and was used by their lead team leader Patra. In the anime, it at least was able to transform interrupting parts, allowing it to change its metaparts to any other metapart, and was able to copy the effects of the Medaforce. This is a particularly powerful technique, which was used very effectively against Team Japan, and actually caught them off guard, especially since the other two medabots on Egypt's team were both T-Mummy, which weren't particularly that powerful, but again, Cleobattler's specialty was actually partnering with these T-Mummies, and they would use techniques that kind of ensnared their opponents into smaller spaces to neutralize any speed techniques they could use. It was seen to use the Medaforce at the same time as Medabi, but Medabi flew in the face of the Medaforce being used by Cleobattler, and then just kind of punched Cleobattler, taking it out. Medabi mentioned at the end of the battle that whilst Cleobattler was a very powerful medabot to face, the problem is by copying others' techniques, they aren't learning anything, because they don't have their own style, they're just using their opponent's styles, and for anyone with any level of strength, they should be able to get over that. Okay, question 6 is, which team in the World Championships were made up of the Rubber Robo Gang? This was quite a unusual episode in who they were, and it actually ends up being quite an obscene episode. It's very, very weird. I like the episode, but I think of it as more of a filler. It did kind of introduce us to behind-the-scenes interaction between War Bandit and Erica's Metapod, Sailor Multi, therefore giving, or as they named it in the, I think they named it in the English dub as Brass. So there was some sort of interaction between that. The kind of the team that was made up of the Robo Gang ended up actually cross-dressing. So they were dressed as women, but throughout one of the battles, what ended up happening were they were revealed to be Robo Gang members who actually ended up being male. And the answer was Team Switzerland. Their purpose within the tournament was to, because the World Championships were used to draw lots of powerful battlers, the chances of stealing rare metals in order to fuel their plan for world domination was the reason that they had to compete. However, they used very cheap tactics. For those stupid teams, they just used kind of like a flirting technique to request their opponents to surrender and kind of just wimp out of the fight. This happened a few times, and they were able to then use their medabots to just completely dominate their opponents. However, in one case, the opponent refused and managed to take them out of the competition. Okay, so question 7 is, who was the original owner of Yugioh? Now, Yugioh has had a couple of different owners. One is very much in their past, and this is the one that I'm asking you to look at. I know he was owned by someone else, but that's not the point of the question as it is. And the answer is Dr. Hushi. He was the original owner of Yugioh. However, he was not seen after a fire started within his house. He has been presumed dead. As of now, he had some sort of interaction with Dr. Hushi, who has been helping him out. But Yugioh is known for being quite a loner-based medabot, who is another one of the medabots that has the ability to use the Metaforce. Later on, we find that there was another Dr. Meta-Evil, who was also a student of Dr. Hushi, who had set up all of this just in order to get to Yugioh's rare metal to further his own scheme. Okay, so question 8 is, which character had a medabot that looked similar to Metabee? There was a couple that kind of looked a little bit like Metabee, but I'm looking at the original series. Please disregard the one that was in Kilobots. I think that was Black Beetle, because I am aware it was meant to look like a dark version of Metabee in that respect, but it didn't really look like him that much. There was a very similar looking Metabot in the original series. And please ignore the answer, this is wrong. It's not Rintaro, it's his, that's the original owner. The Medabot itself is called Kantaroth. It is an upgraded version of Metabee with a stronger appearance, but it has a darker kind of yellowish colour. It was seen in its first appearance to be mistaken for Metabee, causing trouble for Ikki and his partner due to Rintaro's overzealous and disregard for protocols within row battles. He was very kind of like, let's just start the battle. He didn't really look to be following rules. Question 9. Who is Ikki's best friend in the series? I'm not referring to any of the other characters except for the main one that you can see is always kind of around him. It's pretty obvious to find out. It's probably the easiest question I've got on this list. And the answer is, of course, Erika. She's always been seen to be hanging around Ikki. They tend to care quite a lot about each other. Erika is very tomboyish. Her personality is, she can be soft when she needs to be, but she does have quite a strong kind of opinion on things. She was the school's photographer. She did a lot of like journalist aspects to things. Sometimes you do see her writing for the local school paper. She had her medabot known as Brass in the English dub, or I think it's called Sailor Multi in the Japanese version. She's always making fun of Ikki and kind of half putting him down without going too far. She kind of knows where to toe the line with him, but if Ikki's ever being too kind of pessimistic or just down for her, she will kind of force him to either change his mood or kind of like act strict with him in order for him to kind of change his behavior to cheer up a little. Okay, and this final question is quite a simple one as well. Question 10 is, what is the name given to medabots in the third series that have no emotions? Originally, all medabots were just referred to as medabots, and even in the final series, those ones that are created by the corporation that's run alongside Dr. Aki are still medabots because they retain their emotions. However, Cam in the series, she comes from money, was able to kind of buy out the rights to use and create new designs. The whole emphasis on the alternative versions of medabots is that you trade emotions for power. The whole point isn't to really have much of an interaction with the medabot. It's often seen with characters such as Ginkai, where they'll try and have a conversation with the medabot, and because it's not a medabot, all they do is kind of look back. They don't interact unless you actually give them a specific command to do something. And so by trading away the emotions, you're able to get more power, meaning that in more cases than one, often these newer versions would actually destroy the original medabots. The biggest problem with that is most of the other companies had to end up competing with that to try and retain the emotions alongside giving more power. That's why medabots such as Arc Beetle were introduced as a way of kind of leveling out the power. And the answer is kilobots. These were all created just to be destroying, and in many of the cases where they did, they ended up in row battles, not only ceasing the opponent's medabot, they would then proceed to completely destroy them. Ginkai was seen to be trying to do this with some of his earlier kilobots, the ones he would get shipped off from Cam, and he would always be kind of like a beta tester. He would try out the new inventions, and Cam was using him as a bit of a guinea pig in order to progress the designs of the kilobots. In a number of cases, Metabee had to go through various parts changes just to be able to compete with these kilobots. He would not initially go into the fight with the upgrades, but would often be defeated and then realise, oh, I need this upgrade, or oh, I really don't want the upgrade, but I realise if I don't have it, then I will be defeated. This came about the creation of kilobots such as Black Beetle. This was the first kilobot to actually have emotions built into them. She was a powerful kilobot, and that was the only way they were able to actually install the Metaforce, which requires the harnessing of the rare metal as well as kind of like its soul to trigger its ability. Last down the line, there were a couple of kilobots which were incredibly powerful, which completely destroyed the older models, which didn't have any emotions, but had so much destructive power that it ended up causing multiple medabots to have to interfere to kind of stop them, and it got to a point where Cam suffered as a result. She ended up having to go into hospital just after the events in the during the ending of the third series. So how did you guys do in the quiz? Are you still enjoying it? I'd love to know any feedback you have for these quizzes. Hopefully I'm going to be trying to make them a little bit more difficult as the days go by, and I will be focusing on a lot more different styles of content. I haven't quite decided which anime I am likely to be focusing next, but it will be probably something to do with maybe Bleach or any kind of series like that. I might even look at what I was discussing a bit earlier, which is the Beyblade series. Again, these will be basic questions at the for the time being, until I'm able to actually go through some of the episodes and build something a little bit more comprehensive and a bit more difficult. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Make sure to comment down below anything you want, and don't forget to subscribe.